What makes a weapon deadly? The gun or the man behind it? In October 1943, in the mountains of northern Italy, a German Wehrmacht officer stood on a ridge overlooking a partisan camp, binoculars in hand, feeling completely safe. He was 1,600 meters away, over a mile. No rifle could reach him at that distance, especially not the rusted, ancient Italian Carcano rifles the partisans carried. Down in the valley, those partisans were arguing. A German patrol had spotted their position. They needed to relocate immediately. But one man, Giorgio Moretti, a 52-year-old former alpine hunter, sat calmly cleaning his rifle. The others mocked him. "Giorgio, that rifle is older than you are. The barrel's rusted. The sights are bent. It's a miracle it even fires." Giorgio didn't respond. He just loaded a single round, walked to the edge of the camp, lay down in the dirt, and aimed at the German officer on the distant ridge. His fellow partisans laughed. "Giorgio, that's impossible, even with a perfect rifle." The shot echoed through the mountains. 1,600 meters away, the German officer collapsed, dead before he hit the ground. The laughter stopped. If you want to know how skill defeats technology, subscribe now. This is the story of the partisan who proved weapons don't win wars. Warriors do. Giorgio Moretti was born in 1891 in a small village in the Italian Alps near Belluno. He grew up hunting ibex and chamois in mountains where one wrong step meant death. By age 15, Giorgio could hit a mountain goat at 400 meters with his grandfather's old Carcano rifle. By 20, he was the best shot in 3 valleys. He became a hunting guide, leading wealthy clients into the high peaks, teaching them patience and precision. Giorgio understood something most marksmen never learned. Long-range shooting wasn't about the weapon. It was about reading wind, temperature, altitude, breathing, and most importantly, accepting that you only got one shot. In 1915, Italy entered World War I. Giorgio was conscripted into the Alpini, Italy's elite mountain troops. He fought Austria-Hungary, in the peaks of the Dolomites, where men froze to death and artillery couldn't reach. Giorgio became a designated marksman, taking impossible shots across mountain valleys that other soldiers said couldn't be made. He survived the war, returned to his village, married, had 2 sons, and went back to hunting and guiding. For 20 years, life was good. Then Mussolini dragged Italy into another war. Giorgio's sons enlisted in 1940, sent to fight in North Africa. Both were killed at El Alamein in 1942. Giorgio buried his grief in the mountains, hunting alone, speaking to no one. Then, September 2043, everything changed. Italy surrendered to the Allies, but Germany refused to accept it. Wehrmacht forces poured into northern Italy, declaring it occupied territory. Italian soldiers were given a choice: fight for Germany or be imprisoned. Most surrendered. Some fled to the mountains and formed partisan bands, guerrilla fighters who refused to accept occupation. Giorgio joined them, not from patriotism or politics, from simple arithmetic. The Germans had helped kill his sons. Now Giorgio would help kill Germans. The partisans gave him an old Carcano M91 rifle, the same model he'd used as a boy. This one had been buried for 3 years to hide it from fascist authorities. The barrel was pitted with rust. The wooden stock was cracked. The sights were slightly bent. The younger partisans laughed when they saw it. "Giorgio, that rifle is trash. You need something better." Giorgio just cleaned the rust carefully and said nothing, because he knew what they didn't. With enough skill, any rifle becomes deadly. He just needed the right target to prove it. October 1943. Giorgio's partisan band, 37 men hiding in the Apennine Mountains, lived like wolves. They moved, constantly, never staying in one location more than 3 days. The Germans hunted them with patrols, collaborators, and promises of rewards for information. Their leader was Carlo Benedetti, a former Italian army captain who'd refused to surrender to the Germans. Smart, tactical, but young, only 32. He respected Giorgio's age and experience, but worried about the old man's rifle. Giorgio, we captured some German Kar 98K rifles last week. Take one. Your Carcano is falling apart. Giorgio examined his rifle like a craftsman inspecting a familiar tool. This rifle knows me. I know it. We understand each other. The younger partisans didn't understand. They had modern captured weapons, German Mausers, British Lee Enfields taken from supply drops. Why would anyone use a 40-year-old Italian rifle that looked like it belonged in a museum? But Giorgio had his reasons. The Carcano M91 had peculiar ballistics, high velocity, flat trajectory, designed for alpine warfare at long distances. It wasn't pretty, but in the right hands, it was accurate far beyond what its appearance suggested. The camp's problem wasn't weapons, it was location. They were running out of mountains to hide in. German patrols had found 3 of their previous camps. Each time the partisans relocated just hours before Wehrmacht soldiers arrived. Someone was reporting their positions. "We have a spy," Carlo said during a night meeting. "Someone in the valley is watching us and telling the Germans. Then we find them and kill them," a young partisan named Luca said. "We don't know who it is," Carlo replied. "Could be anyone, a farmer, a priest, someone we trust." The next morning, the problem became immediate. A German patrol appeared on a ridge 1,600 meters above the camp, too far to engage with normal rifles, but close enough for them to observe with binoculars. The officer in charge was clearly mapping partisan positions, taking notes, calling in coordinates over a radio. "We need to move," Carlo said. "Now, before he calls in artillery or a full company." The partisans scrambled to pack equipment, but Giorgio sat down, opened his rifle case, and started cleaning his Carcano methodically. "Giorgio, we're evacuating," Luca shouted. Giorgio loaded a single round. "Give me 2 minutes." Giorgio walked to the edge of camp, found a flat rock, and lay prone. The German officer on the ridge was a tiny figure, barely visible even with binoculars. Shatti 600 meters, over a mile. The partisans gathered behind him, whispering, "He's lost his mind." "That's impossible, even with a perfect rifle. Someone stop him before he wastes ammunition." Giorgio ignored them. He'd made shots like this before, not in war, but hunting ibex in these same mountains. He understood something. These young men didn't. Physics doesn't care about politics or equipment. Ballistics work the same whether you're hunting animals or men. He studied the wind. A light breeze from the west, maybe 4 kilometers per hour. At 1,600 meters, that meant the bullet would drift approximately 60 centimeters right. He adjusted his aim left. Altitude, 1,400 meters above sea level. Thin air, less resistance. The bullet would fly slightly flatter than at sea level. Temperature, October morning, maybe 12 degrees. Cold air is denser. Bullet drops slightly more. The German officer stood still, scanning the valley with binoculars. Perfect target. Stationary, unaware. Giorgio's breathing slowed. 4 breaths per minute. On the 4th exhale, his body went completely still. He aimed 2 meters above and 1 meter left of the target, compensating for drop and drift, trusting mathematics, physics, and 50 years of experience. His finger touched the trigger. The Carcano's trigger pull was heavy, 12 pounds, designed for cold weather reliability. Giorgio squeezed smoothly, gradually increasing pressure until the rifle cracked. Sharp, loud, echoing across the valley. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. The bullet traveled 1,600 meters at 700 meters per second. Time to target, 2.3 seconds. Time for the sound to return. Another 4.7 seconds. The German officer was still standing, binoculars raised. Then he collapsed, fell backward off the ridge. Gone. Complete silence in the partisan camp. Giorgio stood, ejected the spent casing, and slung his rifle over his shoulder. "We have 2 minutes before the patrol investigates. Start moving." Carlo stared at him. How did you? "I told you, this rifle knows me." The partisans looked at Giorgio's rusted Carcano with new respect and fear, because if an old man with a broken rifle could make that shot, what else was possible? The German patrol found their officer dead with a single bullet wound through the chest. The medic examined the entry angle and calculated backward. The shot had come from at least 1,500 meters. Impossible distance for partisan weapons. "Sir, this doesn't make sense," the sergeant reported to his commander. "Partisans don't have precision rifles. They use rusted Italian carbines and captured bolt actions. No one can shoot accurately at this range." The commander disagreed. Someone just did. "Increase security. No officer stands exposed. Ever." Within a week, every German unit in northern Italy had received the warning. Partisan sniper operating in Apennine sector. Extreme range capability. All personnel maintain cover at distances exceeding 1,000 meters. German soldiers started calling him Der Berggeist and the Mountain Ghost, an invisible killer who struck from impossible distances with a rifle that shouldn't work. The Partisan network spread the story differently. Giorgio Moretti, the old hunter with the rusted rifle, had dropped a German officer at over a mile. Proof that courage and skill mattered more than equipment. Carlo's band received 3 times as many recruits that month. Young men from valleys across the region came to join the group with the sniper who can't miss. Giorgio hated the attention. He wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting because his sons were dead and someone needed to pay. But Carlo understood the psychological value. "Giorgio, whether you like it or not, you've become a symbol. Every time you take an impossible shot, you prove we can win against the Germans despite having inferior weapons." Over the next 3 months, Giorgio made 17 more long-range shots. Not all at 1,600 meters. Most were 800 to 1,200 meters. But each one was carefully chosen. Officers, radio operators, machine gunners. High-value targets the Germans couldn't afford to lose. The Wehrmacht adapted. Officers stopped standing on ridges. Radio operators worked under camouflage nets. Machine gun positions were relocated constantly, but Giorgio adapted too. He learned to read German patrol patterns, predict where officers would position themselves, anticipate movement. His rusted Carcano became the most feared rifle in northern Italy, not because it was superior, because the man behind it understood that marksmanship wasn't about equipment. It was about patience, precision, and accepting that you only got one shot. Giorgio made every shot count. Then in January 1944, the Germans decided the Mountain Ghost had to die. January 1944. German intelligence identified Giorgio's general operating area through pattern analysis. 17 long-range killings, all within a 50-kilometer radius. All at elevations above 1,000 meters. All targeting leadership. Wehrmacht command assigned a specialist to eliminate him. Hauptmann Klaus Richter, a former Olympic biathlete and decorated sniper with 43 confirmed kills on the Eastern Front. Richter brought a team of 6 elite Gebirgsjäger, mountain troops trained specifically for alpine warfare. Their mission: find and kill the Mountain Ghost. Richter studied every partisan killing attributed to Giorgio, calculated shooting positions based on bullet trajectories, identified 3 likely base areas where the partisan sniper operated. "This man is exceptional," Richter told his team. "He shoots at distances I wouldn't attempt. But he has patterns. He favors western approaches where morning sun blinds targets. He shoots from elevations above his target. Classic hunter mentality. And he always shoots once, then disappears. How do we find him?" a Gebirgsjäger asked. "We don't find him. We make him find us." Richter's plan was simple. Use a German officer as bait. Position him on a ridge in Giorgio's operating area, at a distance Giorgio couldn't resist, 400 meters. But surround the position with hidden counter-snipers at different elevations. When Giorgio took the shot, they'd triangulate his position from muzzle flash and sound, then close in before he could relocate. The trap was set on January 15, 1944. Giorgio saw the German officer through his binoculars, standing on a ridge 400 meters away. "Perfect target. Almost too perfect." "Something's wrong," Giorgio told Carlo. "What do you mean?" "That officer. He's been standing exposed for 20 minutes. After months of hiding, suddenly they're careless. It's bait. You think they're trying to lure you?" Giorgio studied the surrounding ridges through his binoculars. Saw nothing, but felt it. The hunter's instinct that something was watching back. "Yes, they have counter-snipers positioned, waiting for me to shoot." Then we leave, Carlo said. Don't take the shot. Giorgio considered this. Thought about his sons, buried in North African sand. Thought about 17 dead Germans who'd never kill another partisan. Thought about the rusted Carcano that everyone had mocked. No, Giorgio said. I'm taking the shot, but not the one they expect. Giorgio studied the German trap through his binoculars. The officer on the ridge, the surrounding peaks where counter-snipers would hide. The angles, elevations, sight lines. They expect me to shoot the officer, Giorgio said. So I won't. Carlo looked confused. Then what? I shoot the counter-sniper. Giorgio had hunted in these mountains for 50 years. He understood something the Germans didn't. When you set a trap, you create predictable patterns. The counter-snipers had to position themselves where they could see the bait and cover likely shooting positions. That meant specific ridges, specific elevations, and those positions were now Giorgio's targets. He studied the eastern ridge, 100 meters away. Perfect counter-sniper position, overlooking the bait officer, covering the western approaches Giorgio typically used. Morning sun would be behind the sniper, giving him advantage, but it also meant the sniper would be backlit for someone shooting from the south. Giorgio repositioned, moved 400 meters from his original spot, circling to a southern approach the Germans wouldn't expect. Found a shooting position behind a boulder. Through his scope, he saw it. A barely visible shape on the eastern ridge. Camouflaged, professional, watching the bait officer and waiting for Giorgio to appear. Hauptmann Richter had made one mistake. He'd assumed Giorgio thought like a soldier. But Giorgio thought like a hunter, and hunters know that the best time to strike a predator is when it's focused on other prey. Giorgio calculated the shot, 100 meters. Crosswind from north, 8 kilometers per hour. Adjust 30 centimeters left. Elevation compensation. Temperature, humidity. His breathing slowed. Heartbeat dropped to 40 beats per minute. On the exhale, the world narrowed to physics and mathematics. The Carcano cracked. 100 meters away, the German counter-sniper collapsed. Chaos erupted on the German positions. Richter's radio exploded with panicked reports. Sniper down. He's not where we expected. East Ridge compromised. Giorgio was already moving. Never stay in position after firing. That was lesson 1 from 50 years of hunting. He relocated 800 meters north, found another position. Through binoculars, he saw German soldiers rushing to the fallen counter-sniper's position. Saw another camouflaged shape on a western ridge. Second counter-sniper, now exposed and looking toward the first sniper's position instead of watching for threats. Mistake number 2, Giorgio's. Second shot dropped the German before he could warn his team. Now Richter understood. The Italian Partisan wasn't falling for the trap. He was systematically destroying it. Abort. Everyone withdraw, Richter ordered. But Giorgio had one more target. Through the chaos, he spotted a German officer. Not the bait, but someone coordinating the withdrawal. Radio antenna visible. Commander, 300 meters. Difficult shot with soldiers moving everywhere. But Giorgio had been shooting moving ibex across mountain valleys since he was 15. The Carcano fired its third shot. Hauptmann Klaus Richter, Olympic biathlete and decorated sniper, fell with a bullet through his chest. The German trap had failed completely. 3 dead, including their commander. 0 partisan casualties. The story of Giorgio's counter-ambush spread through both sides. German units in northern Italy became even more cautious. No more attempts to trap the mountain ghost, just fear. Partisan recruitment exploded. If an old man with a rusted rifle could defeat Germany's best snipers, maybe resistance wasn't hopeless. Giorgio continued fighting until April 1945, when German forces in Italy surrendered. He survived the war, having made over 40 documented long-range kills with his ancient Carcano. After the war, Giorgio returned to his village, buried his rifle in the mountains where he'd hunted as a boy, never spoke about what he'd done. When journalists tried to interview him about being a partisan hero, Giorgio refused. I'm not a hero. I'm a hunter who lost his sons and hunted the men who killed them. That's all. In 1963, a young Italian army marksmanship instructor tracked Giorgio down, asking for advice on long-range shooting. The army wants to know your techniques. How you made shots at distances our manual says are impossible with Carcano rifles. Giorgio, now 72, smiled. The manual is written by people who've never hunted in mountains. At high altitude, with patience, understanding wind and ballistics, any rifle becomes accurate. The question isn't whether the rifle can make the shot. It's whether the man behind it can. But your rifle was rusted. The sights were bent, which taught me to compensate, to understand the weapon's flaws and adjust. A perfect rifle makes you lazy. A flawed rifle makes you precise. The instructor asked the question everyone wanted answered. What's the secret to long-range shooting? Giorgio's answer was simple. Accept that you only get one shot. When you know you can't afford to miss, you stop missing. Giorgio Moretti died in 1978 at age 86, in his village in the Alps. His obituary mentioned he'd been a partisan during the war, but didn't elaborate. His rifle, the rusted Carcano M91 that had killed over 40 Germans, was never found. Giorgio had buried it somewhere in the mountains, location unknown. But 30 years after his death, a hiker found something unusual. A boulder at 1,400 meters elevation with 17 notches carved into it, each notch representing a successful shot over 1,000 meters. The boulder was in Giorgio's favorite hunting area, the place where he'd learned to shoot as a boy, the place where he'd buried his son's memories and his war. Local historians preserved the boulder as a memorial, with a plaque, Giorgio Moretti, Partisan. Proved that skill defeats technology. His weapon was an ancient rusted rifle. His advantage was 50 years of patience. Today, the Italian military teaches Moretti's counter-ambush at Richter's Trap as a tactical case study. How situational awareness and unorthodox thinking defeated superior training and equipment. But here's what they often miss. Giorgio didn't defeat the Germans because he was a better soldier. He defeated them because he thought like a hunter, not a warrior. Soldiers follow doctrine. Hunters adapt to terrain, weather, prey behavior. Soldiers trust their equipment. Hunters trust their skills. When Hauptmann Richter set his trap, he thought like a soldier, positioning assets according to tactical doctrine. Giorgio thought like a hunter, reading the environment, predicting behavior, striking when predators were vulnerable. That's why the rusted rifle won, not because it was superior, because the man holding it understood that weapons are tools, nothing more. The human behind the tool is what matters. Here's the truth about Giorgio Moretti. Everyone mocked his rusted Carcano until he made a shot they said was impossible. Then they respected the rifle. But they should have respected the man, because he would have made that shot with any rifle. The weapon didn't matter. The warrior did. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. Drop a comment about a time skill beat superior equipment. Share this so Giorgio Moretti's name lives on. So an old hunter who became a partisan legend is never forgotten. They mocked his rusted rifle. He dropped an officer from a mile away. Then he outsmarted Germany's best sniper with a weapon held together by rust and willpower. The Germans sent their elite. Giorgio sent them home in coffins. With a rifle everyone said was worthless. Remember, the best weapon isn't the newest or most expensive. It's the one in the hands of someone who refuses to miss. Giorgio Moretti proved that for 2 years of war, 43 kills, and 86 years of quiet mastery. His rifle was trash. His skill was legendary. And in the end, skill won. The mountain ghost never missed. Not because his rifle was perfect, because he was.